Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart of the Matter, a broadcast series where survivors come on and share their stories, inspiring us to live the healthiest lives we can. I'm Susan Smith, your host. I want to remind everyone that heart disease is the number one killer of women, taking the lives of 1 in 4. I share this statistic because our guest, Teri Walters, is a heart disease survivor. I'm so pleased and honored that my friend and heart sister can be with us today and tell her story and answer some questions. I'm going to read her bio so you know a little bit about her, and then I'll have her tell her story. Teri Walters is married to her husband, Kim. She has been married for 44 years. She has 2 grown children, a daughter, Lindsay, and son, Troy. She's Nana to 4 grandchildren. Teri works full-time. She's had her current position for 30 years at Michigan State University. She's a hospice volunteer, an International Friendship Program volunteer, and a trained master gardener. I was impressed when I read that. She's also the mom of a yellow Labrador named Tula, who is currently in training to be a service therapy dog. Won't you join me in welcoming Teri Walters? Hi, Teri.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me.
I'm so pleased you're here. Teri's going to answer some questions after a bit, but I'd like to start off and ask her to tell her story for us. Teri, would you tell your story?
Yes, I'd love to. I'll start from probably birth. My mom and dad were very young when they had me, and um, as an infant, I was born with my left eye closed. Um, and now they call that a ptosis now. And when I was in kindergarten, they sent me to University of Michigan for an evaluation. And I have what's called Marcus Gunn pupil, but I also have a ptosis in my left eye and something that is called jaw winking. And when I move my jaw back and forth, my eyelid moves up and down. I have had surgery to correct the ptosis back in 1988 after our son was born. But anyway, in 2006, March, I started having what was, and it felt like an extra heartbeat going on in my chest. And I remember it started on a Friday. I stopped at the grocery store, got out of the car, and I had ringing in my ears and just lightheadedness, where you're almost going to pass out, but you don't. And I had lunch with my mom the next day on Saturday, and I told her what was going on. And I had just recovered from a bout of norovirus and thyroid issues run in my family. So I thought, well, it could be my thyroid too. That affects your heart. So I told her I'd call my doctor on Monday. And we left it at that. And the next day, we went to church and it was still having problems. And we met our daughter Lindsay for breakfast. And the feeling of my heart coming out of my chest was more intense. So I had to pass on breakfast and we went to the emergency room. And some of you know that when you get to the emergency room and you say you're having heart issues, they take you to a room immediately and they check your vitals. And I had an ECG, and the technician ripped off the probes and he said, "You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "Wait a minute. I'm having an episode right now." I said, "You didn't leave those probes on long enough." So he begrudgingly put them back on me. And left them on for longer than a hot minute, and when I was having an episode, he looked at me and said, "Are you having one now?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, I have just recorded that." And I spent the next few days in the hospital. They first did an echo, and the technician that did that was supposed to send me for a stress test right after that. And she just kept getting a little chattier and chattier. And she said, "Sit right here. I'm going to get the doctor." And they came in, and I said, "Well, stress test next." And he said, "Yeah, no." He said, "You have an aneurysm, and more than likely, you probably have a bicuspid aortic valve." So the next day, I had a TEE where they go down and with the camera and check things out. And sure enough, my valve was bicuspid, which normally they're tricuspid. And the cardiologist that was on my case, that they put on my case when I was in the hospital, came in and he said, "Well, we're going to put you on a beta blocker to calm things down." And he said, "I want to watch your aneurysm for a month to see how fast it's growing." And it's like, okay. So that was March of 2006. And in August, September, thinking if I, I started thinking that I needed a second opinion, and started checking on the internet, which we call Dr. Google now. And an aneurysm is a very serious condition. So I scheduled a second opinion with a local doctor, and wanted to keep things convenient for my family. Um, so we scheduled surgery, and I had read a lot about beating heartbeat surgery, open heart surgery, because what I had read about open heart surgery on the heart lung machine, people can lose some of their memories. And I felt like I was young enough that I didn't want to lose my memories. And he said, "Sure, we can do whatever you want to do." And I said, "Fabulous." So I called my cardiologist and told him that I had scheduled surgery and needed the tests that you have before the surgery. And he said, "Well, I would really like you to see a doctor at University of Michigan." And I said, "Well, the more opinions I have, the better." So I was scheduled to see the doctor at U of M, and they called and said he had a medical emergency, and was not going to be able to see me that day. And I said, "Well, he's my third opinion. My cardiologist really wants me to see him." And she said, "Okay, how about the following week?" It was less than 7 days. And I said, "That would be great." So when I got to University of Michigan and met my cardiology surgeon and told him what I had already scheduled, he said, "Oh, Teri, if you have beating heart surgery, open heart surgery," he said, "you will certainly die of a stroke on the table." He said, "I don't need your business, but you need someone to perform the surgery that does this all the time." And I was it was divine intervention that I kept my appointment with him. He was really my third opinion. And I had the tests that I needed that same day that I was there. And the surgery was scheduled for the end of November 30th of 2006. And I went home December 7th on my 49th birthday.
Oh,
So
Teri,
I believe I'm
what a
here for a reason.
absolutely, and what a journey and what a blessing that doctor was there, and not that he talked sense into you, but that was your third opinion, and oh my goodness. So you've said a couple of terms that aren't familiar to me: beating heart surgery is that the same as open heart surgery? And you mentioned a machine, a heart-lung machine.
So when you have open heart surgery, you're put on the heart-lung machine
I see.
while they're working on your heart. So
I get
when you have the valve replacement, they that's the machinery that they use. So I can't remember what I researched about beating heart surgery, but it was fairly
Yeah.
new. Um, but I liked the sound of it because I didn't want to lose my memories. And the size of my aneurysm, it was a medical emergency, and it really should have been taken care of in March when I was diagnosed, instead of waiting to see how fast it was growing.
Okay. Well, that's a good lesson for our audience to hear, and I thank you for sharing that. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Oh my goodness. So I have a few other questions about that, but let me go on to the questions that we normally ask. And I'm
Sure.
just so curious to know, did you have any emotions about this whole diagnosis and the process of your heart incident?
I immediately had a meltdown in the hospital when they told me that I would have to have open heart surgery. And I remember calling my family and saying, I have to have open heart surgery. It's like, oh my gosh. My grandpa, which was my dad's dad, had open heart surgery in September of 1976 at the University of Michigan. And I remember going to visit him, and he was just so gray and he was in pain, but he was very cranky. And I remember telling my new husband that he was going to be just fine because he was still crabby.
Okay. A meltdown was perfectly justified, in my opinion.
Yes.
All right. Did you have to make any lifestyle changes after your heart incident?
I was more conscious of it, um, because my heart cath came back clean. I had no blockages or anything. I thought, well, everything in moderation, but I'm more conscious of my diet, more fruits, more vegetables, more lean meats, less, sugary snacks.
Right.
We don't drink soda, we drink water. More conscious of what we're putting in our mouths, yes.
Right. That's
Activity
always a good.
has always been a challenge for me because I have a sit down office job. And so during COVID, when we adopted our puppy, and I saw my cardiologist like 2 months after we adopted her, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, Teri, you need her." Because I just really felt like my numbers improved. Everything improved after we got her. Yeah.
I've talked to so many survivors who have a dog that is part of their exercise activity and how they feel their
Yes.
physique has improved. So let me ask you this. What did you learn about yourself?
Yes.
What did you learn about you during this whole thing?
I learned specifically that I had to advocate for myself, and I had to be persistent and bold and courageous when advocating for myself. Most men don't like um, women who advocate for themselves. I just felt like um, medical professionals are not God. They are researchers. They've chosen this profession, and they can still continue to learn as well. And I believe they need to listen to me when I'm telling them this is what I'm experiencing. And it may not be classic, but this is what I'm experiencing.
I totally agree. And I saw that in the very first part of your story where you had the tech put those probes back on. because you knew you were having an episode. And
Yes.
that's really important for our audience to hear. Well, my
Yeah.
last question for you today is, what is your advice to women about heart disease?
I want all women to know their numbers and know their own bodies. And when something is going on and they know that it's not, quote, normal for them, something that's going on in their body, they need to act on it immediately. And if it's their heart and you go to the ER, they take you right away, but it doesn't mean you're going to um, get the proper diagnosis or the proper answer that you need. But be persistent,
Be
advocate.
persistent and
Yes,
advocate. Those are
yes,
two excellent words, two great pieces of advice. Oh, Teri, your story is so inspiring to me, and I'm sure it's inspiring to everyone that watches. And I want to thank you for being here today and sharing your story and all the tips and things that you learned through this journey. I forgot to mention earlier that Teri and I met in 2018 at Mayo Clinic when we were there training to become women heart champions. And she currently is a champion working there in her community in the support group. So there's never too many things that we can do to raise awareness. And thank you so much again for being here. So I'm going to sign off and say goodbye to our audience. But Teri, if you sit tight, you and I can talk a minute afterwards. So
certainly.
to the audience, thank you for watching. And until next time, see you. Bye bye.